Being one of 6 made me a weirdo in school. We were like the Vaughn Traps, and our house was like the Hunger Games. Anytime my mom would get a good, sugary cereal, I'd hide a bag from my 3 older brothers, who'd eat everything. I loved making The Hunger Games. It was the happiest experience of my professional life. Lionsgate was supportive of me in a manner that few directors ever experience in a franchise. They empowered me to make the film I wanted to make and back the movie in a way that requires no explanation beyond the remarkable results. The world of The Hunger Games is a paranoid survivalist's dream. The fans of The Hunger Games, of the book, are very passionate. It's funny, even at my concerts there are people holding up Cinna signs. I'm excited to see a new age of rom-coms, and especially teen romantic comedies, because when I was younger, I was watching Harry Potter and Hunger Games and stuff like that. I loved those movies, but they are a little bit heavy. We didn't really get to have the light-hearted love stories. The Hunger Games isn't for everybody, but neither is Anna Karenina. Within months after reading the novel, The Hunger Games, I went from telling my mom that I could see myself as this character to actually getting the role. My mother reminds me that if I could manifest such an important role just because I wanted it so much, all of my dreams are possible. People read vampire novels and say, "Oh, I want to read another vampire novel." People read fantasy, and they're like, "Oh, I love fantasy." I don't know that people are necessarily finishing Hunger Games and immediately wanting to read another dystopian tale. I was an early adopter of the Hunger Games. I read them before they were bestsellers. I was on the pre-order wait list for A Mockingjay on Amazon. I was like, whoa, I'm auditioning for Hunger Games? That's like my dream come true. That's like a Trekkie auditioning for Star Trek. I'm interested in a lot. Like right now, I'm just really excited for Catching Fire and Mockingjay Part 1 and 2. But I love playing characters like Prim. Prim is like my dream character, but after The Hunger Games, it would be fun to look and see what else I could do well. But right now, Prim is like my dream role. In other people's books, I tend to love the really daredevil characters. I love Finnick from The Hunger Games, and I think, probably, my favorite character of all time is Sherlock Holmes. I think movies do play a valuable role in turning people on to the act of reading. I think that phenomenon just creates readers. At first they're going to love Harry Potter, or they may love The Hunger Games, but after that, they're going to love the act of reading and wonder, what else can I read? Every project is different. Adapting Robopocalypse would be totally different than adapting, say, Hunger Games. Each project has its own life and its own identity. You get into trouble when you think there's one single way to approach everything. Each project, there's a different way to attack it. I always figured there would be a kid audience and an adult audience, and there is. That's true for Hunger Games and Twilight and Harry Potter. And Maximum Ride, for sure. In particular what happens is a lot of parents share the books with their kids, and the mom has read it, and the kids, and they talk about it. Hunger Games is a tried-and-true tale about a totalitarian society. It's more similar to China than America. But it's also similar to Nazi Germany and anywhere where the populace get semi-brainwashed into serving the agenda of a very few. I think that the thing that is really strong with The Hunger Games is just that it comes from a very strong idea. I am not a big Hunger Games fan. My brother was a huge fan of The Hunger Games for a couple of years before I got the role, so he was really excited when he heard that I got the role. It's weird because I've grown up a lot after filming the first Hunger Games movie. Growing up with a character is really interesting because you feel like you have this connection with the role. There are so many YA novels being made because there is so much young talent that can bring it to life. J. Law was one of the first females to do it with The Hunger Games, and it's been going on for a while now. With J. Law, it was like, hey, I'm Katniss, and then, hey, I just won an Oscar. Anyone who's watched The Hunger Games, or Female Archers, knows that that is an absolutely physiologically ridiculous idea. Everyone in Hollywood wanted a role in this movie. Everyone wanted to have a part in it. I feel so lucky that I got one, but what I find so cool about Hunger Games is that the real star is the story itself. There are good musicals that came from movies, like Shrek and Legally Blonde, but, they should never mess with The Hunger Games. I think The Hunger Games has a really powerful message about survival, and sacrificing for the ones you love. It's almost like a warning for us to not lose touch of our humanity. We live in a world in which we watch others' misfortunes for entertainment. There's a basis for the war, historically, in the Hunger Games, which would be the Third Servile War, which was Spartacus' War, where you have a man who is a slave who is then turned into a gladiator who broke out of the gladiator school and led a rebellion and then became the face of the war. The film opens up the world beyond Katniss' point of view, allowing the audience access to the happenings of places like the Hunger Games control room and President Snow's Rose Garden, thereby adding a new dimension to the story. If I have to pick one story that most influenced the Hunger Games, it would be the Greek myth of Theseus, which I read when I was about 8 years old. In punishment for past deeds, Athens periodically had to send 7 youths and 7 maidens to a labyrinth. In the maze was this minotaur, and it would eat them. I decided to go to school for advertising and graphic design. That was what I was gonna do, but acting is that thing, it's like a splinter in your mind and you can't get rid of it. So I decided to move to LA. A few years ago, and it just snowballed into this thing called The Hunger Games. All the writing elements are the same. You need to tell a good story. You've got good characters. People think there's some dramatic difference between writing Little Bear and The Hunger Games, and as a writer, for me, there isn't. I've just had the opportunity to see the finished film of The Hunger Games. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I feel like the book and the film are individual yet complementary pieces that enhance one another. We did a Vanity Fair spread for The Hunger Games, and we were on set, and I saw a little head pop up from the tree. There were 3 teenage girls who snuck past security and made it into the forest. For me, the triad of Harry Potter, The Hunger Games and Twilight feature strong women, and as a declared feminist, it's a wonderful thing. These women have really opened up this particular world of storytelling, which I'm very grateful for. It's somewhat disquieting that the same parents and educators who are horrified by the notion of child soldiers have bestowed upon The Hunger Games a double mantle of critical praise and global bestsellerdom. I wrote The Hunger Games in a chair, like a lazy boy chair, next to my bed. I had an office, but my kids sort of took it over. I picked up The Hunger Games thinking it was written at my regressed reading level. I've spent hours reading it, and I'm not even halfway through. Our bass player, whose name is also Nate, ended up reading all 3 novels and loved them. It's The Hunger Games. My character needs to look hungry, a little bit. In the Greed is Good tradition of the Harry Potter and Twilight movie franchises, the overseers of The Hunger Games have split the last book into 2 films. That's the thing about Lionsgate. They are fearless. No other studio would have made Hunger Games the way they did. They're being fearless in the way they make decisions, and it's paying off for them. I find it not hard to make friends, but it's definitely different when I go somewhere like summer camp and everyone already knows that I'm in Hunger Games. My life is still pretty normal, and I still have some really great friends. I couldn't be happier about being a part of Hunger Games and to play Katniss. I have a huge responsibility to the fans of this incredible book and I don't take it lightly. I will give everything I have to these movies and to this role to make it worthy of Suzanne Collins' masterpiece. As a fan of the books, I feel fortunate to be part of the Hunger Games family. It was an amazing experience. I am proud of the film and my performance. I want to thank all of my fans and the entire Hunger Games community for their support and loyalty. With Hunger Games, it's about people rising up to fight against a corrupt government that controls them. The Hunger Games takes place in Panem, a country which is part of America. It's post-apocalyptic. There's been a global war. The Panem country is what remains of this hugely destructive war. The Hunger Games is for 8th grade girls. Winners read The Art of War. After I read The Hunger Games, I went out and got Catching Fire the next day. The first audition my major sent me on was The Hunger Games, and I got the role. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I'd always dreamed of acting on the screen. My previous background was all theater, but I wasn't sure if the opportunity would ever present itself. Not only was this acting for the screen, this was acting in The Hunger Games. I knew that I had to give this audition my all. I finished The Hunger Games trilogy, and I love most anything with zombies. I'm not a very fancy person. I've been a writer a long time, and right now, The Hunger Games is getting a lot of focus. It'll pass. The focus will be on something else. It'll shift. It always does. And that seems just fine. Visit our website for more quotes, quoting.com.